Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the new media show. My name is Todd Cochran. I want to welcome my co-host, Rob Greenlee. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Good morning, Todd. It's great to be here. I appreciate you doing this every morning as you get up at 6 a.m. or was it 5 a.m. now? I
It's
can't
it's
tell.
it, it's 5 a.m. So,
5 a.m.
but this morning I was like sitting here, kind of like, where are these guys at? At 6 o'clock, 6:05, and my cell phone was in the other room, and I ran over and said, "Rob says we can't connect." So
Yeah.
sorry for the late start for those of you that are watching live, but we're here.
Yes, we are. Bright and shiny.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rob, why don't you welcome our guest who's been on before? Go ahead.
Well, Michael Wolf is joining us. He's really turned into being a prolific podcaster, I have to say. I mean, he started out, it wasn't that long ago that he was just an analyst, and it's just amazing, Michael, how much of a podcaster you've turned into. But he's a writer for Forbes. He does some columns, and he also has a research company that he's always diving into the latest in media and tech and stuff. And I wanted to invite him to come on the show to talk about some cool trends around, you know, new media and maybe some other stuff that we can stray into during the conversation today. Well, welcome, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me. Todd, I
Yeah.
didn't know you were 4 hours or 3 hours behind. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's when you guys change your clocks, it goes to 3, and then when it's when it's winter time, it's 2. So I actually almost wish we would change our time too, so it'd keep it because it makes me 6 hours from the East Coast. It just makes it, I mean, it just makes it worse than 3 hours from California. But yeah, that's a lot. That's the price you pay living in paradise.
Well, and we're both in Seattle, so we're both kind of in the same area here. But yeah, it'd be great to hear, Michael, about your next market, a research company, and a couple of your podcasts. Why don't you tell us all about it real quick?
Yeah, I guess the center of gravity is Next Market, which is my company. It's my shingle for research. Before that, I was the VP of research and helped set up GigaOm's research product. People familiar with the tech blog at San Francisco, they were really the first big tech blog to try to monetize the paid content. We launched that in 2009, and that's their biggest division. They're almost more of a research company now than a blog company in terms of how they pay the bills. I decided in 2013, early 2013, to go independent. At the time, I had having worked at a professional tech blog. I just saw how noisy the blog world is, and I know that I need to blog because I'm actually more of a writer than a talker. But I also thought, why not at the same time start a podcast? I had dabbled in podcasting back in 2007, where I did a show on kind of media center type of stuff. But I thought, well, let's give that another try. And at the same time, writing for Forbes, which is a column I have looking at new technologies. I thought, why not also do a deep dive into the world of podcasting because no one had given it a fresh look, and that was kind of the genesis of a lot of the content that kickstarted my podcast.
Yep.
And ever since then, I've just been kind of working on it. I started a new kind of, I guess, site that kind of is a home for all my podcasts as well as other podcasts from other tech podcasters. It's at technology.fm. So if people who are interested in tech podcasts, it's basically a curated hub for tech podcasts. That was a lot of stuff. Is that too much?
No, it's perfect.
No, that's plenty. Well, and
All
you
right.
also do the teardown show too, right?
Yeah, and so I have a good friend out of San Francisco, David Spark, who you've talked to, Rob, and we do a
Yep.
show called the Teardown Show, and that show actually has, kind of evolved a little bit. Where we used to be a roundtable with a couple guests. We just talk through the news of the week, but now we do that. We talk about a couple issues of the week that's happening in tech, and then Dave and I talk to a guest and talk about what he's doing in terms of his industry and his career. So we just finished up a conversation with Jeremy Toman, who's a good friend who sold his social TV company. He's been in TV technology for a long time. The social TV space has moved fast, and he basically did an acquisition. He did an acquisition last year of Miso for those people in the social TV space, and then he sold the aggregated company to another company called Vigil. So we had that conversation last week.
The the tech space is kind of a, that's what I started in, and obviously it's, what I still do my other show on, and it's kind of an interesting space because it's always been easy, really, to monetize. And I was just commenting to basically I got my results for March from my advertiser, and it's pretty incredible. I had my biggest month ever in, basically, I guess for better words, new customer signups. At least in recent memory, the biggest month, I had 170 new customers that signed up, and that was how I'm graded on over at GoDaddy for basically my performance. And I just find it incredible that since July of 2005 to now, and I'm still turning that many customers on to their service. But it's what's wild is that that they've got it and they've supported it and they're supporting, and other shows are finding great advertising for their shows. And I don't want to delve right into that right away, but something maybe we can talk about a little later about how other genres are now finally starting to pick up a little bit, where tech led the way in the back in the beginning.
Yeah, GoDaddy has been a steadfast supporter of tech podcasts for a long time, and I think they were smart being early. Much like a couple others, the Squarespaces of the world and, Citrix.
Yeah.
Those guys saw that these are passionate followers of certain types of content. They come back for more, and they listen to the personality. So, Todd, you're like a personality that people just really engage with on a daily basis or an hourly basis or a weekly basis, and that converts, I think.
Well, I was just, I normally know what my numbers are that they come in, and then we had a pretty good. Obviously, I was pretty happy with March. March is deep, and I'm just thinking to myself, man, this baby just keeps on purring. I got to knock on wood here a little bit because it's like, man, it's let the party continue as long as it can. But no, it is pretty incredible. But so I think the tech side's always been, and tech's easy. There's always new stuff. That's the thing.
Yeah.
We've always got new material.
There's always new toys.
It's a crowded vertical, though. I think the tech, because it's the most mature, it's probably where the most podcasts are outside of maybe comedians coming up the rear at this point. So.
Well, and what's interesting is it's from the audience wise, they're pretty big, and the comedians are audience wise big as well, but the not coming far behind is sports. Sports guys there's huge numbers. I think there's actually more sports shows than there is tech shows, but there's not a lot of good sports shows.
Yeah, if you take Bill Simmons out of it, what is the size of the audience?
What's really fascinating about that is that in the early days of podcasting, sports wasn't really that big of an area for podcasting.
Yeah.
It's been, I think, just the last few years that it's really taken hold and grown across a lot of platforms. I mean, at least from what I've seen.
Well, I think the issue is, tech was there first because people in that vertical are early adopters. I think when you look at the mass market sports listener, I mean, certainly there's overlap in those circles between tech and sports listeners, but the generalist sports listener, not necessarily the earliest adopter. So I think that's why you're seeing the arrival of new genres of where the audiences are not tech-savvy people, because this stuff's just easier to consume and listen to, as you guys well know.
I've been working with ESPN now for about 18 months. We do their stats for their shows, and that's incredible what they are able to, what they produce, and the amount of content and the reach, and obviously I can't say what their reach is, but it's to me it's just mind-boggling how a big organization like that has been able to leverage their radio and their television, and then now their digital stuff, and they've got a great app, and it just feeds the monsters what it really does. And I think some of the tech fans are more voracious appetizers. Basically they consume content at a much higher rate than many other genres do. It's like guys that are sports nuts. They stay on sports channels all day long.
Yeah, I think one of the things that kind of held them back early on, at least from my sampling of their shows, is the audio quality of what they were doing. Do you know offhand, is the audio quality of of those shows now in their podcasts? Has it been improved, do you think?
I don't know. I don't sample the shows very much. I
Yeah,
just
I don't either,
you
but
know and
Well, I always thought it's interesting that Simmons always has a dial-in guest that a lot of kind of high-level professional broadcasters that then podcast seem like they insist on in studio, but I think maybe because he calls the shots. I mean, it's really whatever Simmons wants, he does dial-in. But I think what's interesting is I think you're going to see a large-scale conversion of people who listen to sports on on the AM dial and talk radio convert to podcasts slowly over time. Now, I don't necessarily think they leave behind AM radio, as long as that's in their car. But I think over time, as the podcast app is in the dashboard, that's what they start to listen
yeah.
to.
yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I mean, it makes total sense, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what wins out as far as in-dash experiences or totally coming off the phone. And I believe that the experiences that the mass market are going to have is coming off the phone. The high-end cars, the Mercedes and the BMWs are going to have more dash experiences that are, that connect to your phone, but have kind of custom UIs and things like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how the whole in-car thing plays out and how AM/FM kind of lives in that world too. Are they going to have to go a little bit more high tech, with their user experiences and things like that? So it's going to be interesting to see how those worlds kind of come together here over the next few years.
That's a great point. I mean, I think if you look at how Apple is treating television, and how oftentimes content is just flicked from an iPad or an iOS device to the TV, if it's Apple TV connected, I can envision a world where your iPhone or your iOS device, and then ultimately your Android device, still remains the center of your content life. And then it just beams to you're already seeing this, right? But it'll just be more seamless. And it just beams to your car dash. You'll see like the picture of Todd and Rob, for people listening to the new,
Right.
The new media show. And people won't even be able to tell. They'll just think that it's all programmed to the indoor dash.
Yeah.
So.
One thing as this past couple of weeks, I've been getting a lot of emails from the folks over at Stitcher. And I don't know if your guys' inbox have been asking to do surveys and stuff. And,
Yep.
one of the things I found interesting about their advertising and their monetization survey was they were talking about doing events, going someplace to do something.
Yeah, I saw that too.
And, that's kind of interesting because, Rob, I understand there's a major value in going places to do things. We took TPN or Tech Podcast Network to, Vegas every year for CES and do that event in person. So I wonder if they are not looking at an advertising standpoint, but maybe doing, I get invited to go to Ford events and that type of stuff. So I'm wondering if they're looking to do that type of stuff with a compensation package that basically, pays you for your time to do content. I don't know. I'd be shocked because so many of these events, I was working with HP for a while, and boy, I tell you, their budget, they were always coming back and asking for, can you bring this down? A big company like HP, and I'm like, guys, my rate is already where it's at. I can't go any lower. You're trying to string a little. It was kind of nuts, and I think what happens is that companies think, what's ruined it for us, I hate to say it, is the bloggers who've been willing to take a $5 cup of coffee as payment for a blog post. And so, they think everyone works on the same, we'll just pay for some airfare and we'll put you in a hotel room and that's good enough payment for you. And it's slave wages. And I refuse to do it. And that's one of the reasons why there's certain groups I don't work with anymore, just because, I don't think they really value the content creator.
Maybe you need to work with the right division at HP. I remember going to when I was in the imaging space, the guys who were selling all those ink cartridges.
Yeah.
How they basically had a monopoly on ink cartridges. They put us up at Half Moon Bay in California. Like, it was the nicest. analyst event I've ever gone to, and I
well,
think it's because they basically had a monopoly position.
well, they put you. They no, don't get me wrong. They put you up in a great place and feed you well and take care of you. But when I'm going to there as a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
under contract to,
They're negotiating a deal and they're trying to squeeze pennies.
yeah, and I'm like, you're gonna, yeah, it's really kind of funny. It is, but that is what it is. But I just wonder if that's what Stitcher's gonna try to do.
Well, I think
You guys remember when iHeartRadio did like a bunch of like events? Maybe they're
Yeah.
trying to take a page out of their book.
Maybe.
Well, I think
Rob,
that
I'm sorry,
there's an
Rob, I interrupted
opportunity. No, that's fine. There's an opportunity, I think, around Stitcher facilitating the marketing and promotion of live events in conjunction with the availability of the content. So maybe they're going to try and get into selling tickets or some sort of rev share with shows around live events, and maybe they'll have a few of their own touring events around the country, brought to you by Stitcher, where there's opportunities to do live show performances in some big cities around the country. It could just be a social / marketing activity and a revenue generator from that. I know the reality is a lot of these platforms like Stitcher and Swell are desperately in need of a monetization model. It's the same thing that I faced working on Zune and Windows Phone for podcasts. It's difficult to monetize an aggregator platform, just because most of the content providers want to just have them be pass-throughs and not do any revenue share. And it makes it difficult for those platforms to keep investing in those platforms because there's no revenue around it. So, this may be an effort on the part of Stitcher to head down that path of a successful revenue generator for a lot of comedy podcasts, I know at least.
Yeah, and when there's so much of the content consumed on mobile and the audio's gotten via a feed where they don't have any level of sophistication in terms of ad insertion or the rights, they may not have the rights to do ad insertion. It seems like it's a harder deal with audio than would be an aggregator around people who go to a video site or even like a blog.
One thing too is it's, the last time I checked on their market share was, I don't know, back before the New Media Expo. And at the time, I think their combined Android iOS was maybe 5 or 6%, of the total consumption of the entire podcast market. That's where they were at.
Which is actually pretty high for one platform.
Yeah. Well,
so you're saying they're the Bing of podcast listening.
The Bing podcast.
But I think that put them in the top 20, of the, of the platforms that are, basically adding to the ecosystem. And actually, that may lead to another topic, but I got we're actually making progress on SoundCloud. They are finally,
which means what?
Which means I might be able to get a redirect into their system.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they are working with a competitor of ours already and got theirs implemented. So we're like, hey, you got theirs set up. Let's,
What does that mean? Can you explain that to me, Todd?
What's happening is up to this point, you largely haven't been able to get good stats or basically validated. We couldn't take SoundCloud stats.
Right.
We have no idea how they're measuring, if they're filtering, or if they're doing anything. And now we're basically talking with their people, and what they'll be able to do is, like if you're using the Blueberry or Raw Voice Pro Stats, you'll be able to take your redirect in, basically a redirect code that we use, and drop it on your SoundCloud account. Now that's not done; it's not a done deal, but we're much closer this week than we were a couple weeks ago, in trying to make that happen. So basically, what it'll allow us to do is we'll be able to measure SoundCloud hits, because we got a lot of people they've got their show over there, but it's not its primary hosting point. It's a secondary point of presence, and we want to be able to have our own validation of that. They're giving folks a number, but we want our own validation of that. Of those
and
of that
to
data points.
Get kind of inside baseball. So will SoundCloud play for a primary hosted site on Blueberry? Would that then register in the Blueberry stats?
If they put this in the system, yeah, it will
Okay,
go
got it.
into our Blueberry stats. Just like we're getting the Stitcher data and some others. So maybe they've been listening. I don't know,
They
but
probably have been, I'm sure.
we're pretty excited to see if we can make that transition. Again, it's not a done deal. But if they implemented it for someone else, I'm hoping they'll implement it for us.
So I didn't hear you talk about, if there's a way for the PowerPress plugin to be able to transfer files over there, or how that might
Oh
work?
no, I don't think that's
No?
going to happen. No, this is purely the stats play. Yeah, it's purely
Gotcha. It's
yeah.
purely stats. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not really a distribution
No,
scenario
it'd be
then.
kind of cool
Okay.
if they let us, plug into the API and be able to just,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
shove over there. But I think you're still going to have to go on the site and do what you have to do to post your content.
So, so Michael, you're a big SoundCloud user. You built a big community around that for your show. So, what do you think the secret sauce is to actually doing that? I know a lot of podcasters have kind of struggled with SoundCloud.
I mean, I think that honestly, the most plays that people get from people who have any sort of following is by embedding a SoundCloud player on their primary visitor point, like a website.
Really?
I mean, because I don't think necessarily people are going direct and getting tons of plays on SoundCloud. If you're looking at, for example, Earwolf, or if you're looking, for example, at some of these other podcasters where their primary hosting point, I believe, is SoundCloud, I think most of the plays are coming through feeds and through the website.
Oh, okay. Coming to the regular RSS feeds in there. I
Yeah.
get
I mean,
you.
if the genesis of SoundCloud was an indie musician social sharing site and hosting site, and I think still that's where like the huge volumes but if you have someone like who's like an artist, I can't remember fairly big music artist debuted a song on SoundCloud. If he points his social media there and he points his website there, you'll get massive plays on SoundCloud's platform itself. But I think by and large, if you look at the aggregate plays for podcasters, a lot of it's coming through feeds and through the websites with an
Yeah.
embedded SoundCloud player.
Yeah, the SoundCloud player's been popular, but we just don't. With the decline in web-based plays and everything on mobile, we're having more people listen on mobile than they're going to websites. I think there's going to be over time a declining return on, the player on the website's important, and I'm actually pretty happy with what WordPress is finally doing now, and they've got an effort going on to give it a little more robust player. Their player just looks sexy. That's part of it, and it's big, and that's in my opinion a distractor. But I think if WordPress does what they say they're going to do, that we'll have a player, at least a native WordPress player, that will be equivalent, or maybe not better, but an equivalent to the current look of the SoundCloud player.
Yeah, I think one of the differentiators with that SoundCloud player is that you can comment in stream, right? I mean, you can put markers around, comments around different sections of the program. I don't think that a lot of people will use that capability in there, but I do see comments in there that are targeted to specific parts of the program.
I think it's a great idea for
Yeah.
music, and where you see like thousands of comments is when big independent artists or even label artists go on there, put a song on there, and there'll be 100, 200 people saying this is great
Yeah.
track. I haven't seen a ton of activity around social commenting with spoken word, and a lot of it is spam when you do see it.
Yeah.
I wish they would just, we put together that MetaMark stuff a couple years ago. I just wish we could get some traction on that so that we could, basically in the RSS, basically I don't know if you guys are familiar, but what we did is we made a new RSS spec, or basically it's a item or something that we could add to the current RSS spec that basically within the RSS tells, basically, if let's say we're going to be aggregating into Stitcher, it tells Stitcher from the RSS feed, here's the point where you can drop an ad, or here's a place where we can have a comment window, or here's a place where we can have a link that will pop up. We put all that stuff together, and we just did not get a lot of a lot of community traction. Maybe we're way ahead of our time on that, but it's something we still have built. It's in our system, and it could be utilized today. And it was
Did you
really
guys reach out to other big hosts like Libsyn? Because it seems like if it came from multiple hosts, like it can
right.
coalesce to be an industry
We
standard.
did, and they weren't interested, and maybe it was they were worried it was going to compete with their commercial product where they did you know they had their system where you would do system rebuilding. Our stuff was try to automate it so that it was it had the markers were actually in the metadata. We're not going to get it into the MP3, so the markers would be in the metadata that would travel with the content. But yeah, we just couldn't get them to move, and
It's too bad because if you look at like tech industries, I mean, when there's cooperation
yeah,
between the big guys, that's where the industry grows, right?
yeah.
And if there wasn't IP based standards for the internet, we would all been way behind where we are now. So Cisco's and the Nortels back in the day got together, and so I think that type of stuff would really benefit the podcast industry.
But it's a published spec, so if anybody's interested, email me. I'll be happy to share it with you. Yeah, and really, I had a ulterior motive. When Rob was back at Microsoft, the conversation kept coming up. Well, Microsoft's not going to put podcasting into the Xbox unless there's a way for them to monetize, and it's got to be some
Yep.
sort of automated process. I'm like, hey, we can do that. That's going to be no issue. And I talked with the guys. I said, we got to have a way to pass a marker and I think we've got 8 different categories of stuff that you can mark. And it was like one thing would be real cool is you see this on YouTube where the video's playing and all of a sudden a little cloud comes up with a comment from the content producer, and we had it set up so that we could have that cloud effect, and it's just all that stuff that we think would be cool for audio and video.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand why people had such a hard. To me, it just makes perfect sense. This is how you go to the next step and tie into automated systems.
Yeah. So, did you guys follow the Amazon Fire TV announcement this week?
Got one. I had one delivered yesterday.
You did.
Mhm.
Okay. And I guess the iHeartRadio folks, I guess, have an app in there.
They do.
That's what I understand, and they're doing a deal with them, and that's going to include the talk aspect of the iHeartRadio.
That's cool.
So,
I read this morning that Google withheld YouTube, and I think Amazon's then withholding Amazon Instant Video from Android players or something like that. And someone, I think it was Richard Bullwinkle, who's a Samsung, said so. In the end, Apple wins because they have. I thought that was
Yeah.
funny. There's always these platform competitions where people withhold the goods.
The thing is going. It's they're going to have an explosion in their app section, and I went immediately. That's the first place I went. And I think there's 7 frontline apps in there, and a few that I wasn't familiar with that I loaded and looked at. TuneIn is in there, of course.
Yep.
Pandora, as you would expect, but we actually bought 3. I sent one here, one to my to Angelo, and one to our set-top box developer, and basically the email that went to him is full stop everything you're doing, switch. I want this, I want our apps in this device post haste. And so at all possible, full ahead, all possible speed, to be able to basically, and it should be an easy port.
Do you think it'll be different? Because I know that talking to Leo, this was like maybe a year ago, but like he had his stuff on Roku, and I think he gave me a peek into the stats. It was like as a handful, like maybe a percentage point for all these streamer players for
Yep.
the TV. Do you think that it's going to register maybe with Amazon more?
Well, the thing is for us, my opinion is we just got to be there, and I could care less about the total percentage. Roku's definitely Apple TV's ahead of Roku at this point, but Roku is obviously from a percentage standpoint right there with Apple TV. Now, what happens with Amazon, I don't know, but it's still in the single digits percentage wise. And at one time, I think the highest we ever saw on market share on Roku, it was maybe 3 or 4%. Obviously, higher on video than audio. It's really focused for the video programming, but for us, I guess the main thing is we want people to be able to get the content no matter where they are. So if it's a business decision to, if it's a percent or two, cool. And if we have some crossover, fine. But I think ultimately there will be more shifting toward these devices over time. But it depends on what Apple comes out with their new Apple TV. If they open that up to apps, then I think it really is going to help us a lot. But time will tell if they do that or not.
Yeah, I talked to Roku. I talked to them quite a bit, and I talked to these other guys. And after the obvious things like Netflix and HBO Go, the most popular apps have been Pandora, and so music has been hugely popular on these streaming players. So it's not too much of a leap to think that talk could also be, because I think it's just people use it as their sound in the background.
Stereo.
And so why couldn't it be talk be the sound in the background?
And I don't understand. I've talked to Pandora a handful of times, and they basically every time I've talked to them, they've showed me the hand. They don't want to have nothing to do at this point with talk. And
I don't get that. I've always wondered why they don't do that.
Todd, the CEO Tim Westergren was on a podcast called Radio Stuff. I mean, if you're interested to hear a detailed conversation with him, I would recommend go listen to that, because I believe it just came out like a week ago, where he was talking about the future of Pandora and what he saw as the vision for the long term for Pandora. And he made it extremely clear in that talk and news, weather, sports was in the roadmap and coming.
Wow. I'll say
so.
Radio Stuff, huh? That's the show?
It's called Radio Stuff. It's actually done by I believe there's a person that lives in the Seattle area, but they they do a Skype call in, and
right.
But Tim called into that show to talk about the platform and how it was built, and there's a lot of great stuff in that I think is like a 45-minute conversation with him.
So maybe there's a change of direction. Maybe the troops over there haven't got the message. I'm gonna be, so what I'm gonna do.
Well. Let me couch that with a comment. He said that that's a obvious evolution for the platform in the future, right? I don't believe that he was referring to like in the next couple months. I think he's thinking in the long term. I think once he gets ubiquity, which I think he's pretty much already there, but he also talked about not being included in the CarPlay product too. He didn't share a lot of details about that, but I can see from an Apple perspective not wanting to let Pandora in the door on that, because then that would take away from iTunes Radio. But anyway, I think that Pandora and a lot of these streaming platforms are probably going to wind up adding talk. I think it's the next evolution of those platforms, and I think if you look at the iHeartRadio folks, they've already done that, right? There's been a lot of speculation that a lot of these other platforms are going to do it as well. It's just, when does it make sense for them around their business models and getting content, getting the licensing done. But I think it's coming.
Well, I will definitely, irregardless, if that's a word, I'm going to be emailing my contact over there and saying, hey, here's this program. What's the skinny? We're ready to supply when you're ready to accept.
Yeah. And it's just not, I believe it's just not something that they've reached the point where they're ready to do yet. I think that the speculation prior to this that I heard is that they were primarily first going to deploy talk around music topics. And then that would be kind of like their entry door into it, and they haven't done that yet. So I think that's probably the next step, and then they'll move and add these pieces. Because really, I think it's all about offering smart radio to listeners in the car, where that app and that platform knows where you are, what you're doing, what the context is, and then delivering audio to you based on that. I
mean, the famous Pandora algorithm, the what they have the term for it. It's like DNA. Um, so the music genome. So I mean, they have this app or this algorithm called the music genome. It's partly branding, but you wonder if like part of it is just applying that to talk and getting people or getting a recommendation engine that it really works well around talk content versus music content.
Well,
Or
or a
am I overthinking this?
blending, no, or blending the two. I mean, you think about weather, traffic, sports, as you're driving around in the car, I think one of the big issues is usability in the car, right? And safety. Plus, it's also about personalization and these technology platforms need to be smart enough to know where you are, what you're doing, to deliver your playlist of shows that you like in the location that you happen to be at, and make that easily available to you, really at all times, and on whatever device you happen to be using. So I think that's the future of this stuff. I think it's going to take time for the platforms to develop to the point where they can really deliver on that. But I think that's kind of where all the stuff is going.
I think the distribution's important. It's not the ends to all means, obviously, but
Oh, no, it's not. But it's all about making a compelling play experience,
right.
that makes it simple and easy. Because if we're going to replace radio, it needs to be as simple as radio, and that's what this is all about. It's making it simple.
And with Pandora too, they're going to want to be able to, monetize for their free customers.
That's right.
And hopefully, I don't know. Maybe it's time to start pushing again on this Meta stuff that we've got. That trying to get some more adaption across the space, and it's just going to help everybody over time. We may not get if we could get someone big like Pandora or Stitcher or someone like that to say, yeah, we'll use the spec. That'll kind of force the hand of the other groups that have been kind of holding back and doing so.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Todd. So, someone who is heavy into podcast advertising, if the Pandora terms of service, which probably would look maybe like Stitcher terms of service, says if you're going to get on our platform and have access to our millions of listeners, we can do ad insertion wherever we want. How does that make someone like you feel if you don't have control of the inventory and they want control?
Well, it's tough. You have to weigh whether or not you want to be on the platform or not.
Yeah.
And you would hope that they
Yep.
do some revenue share. Some people are going to say no. And because it's one of the reasons why I left Ustream. I was on Ustream streaming, and no one ever watches their live stream, but for some reason I had it on, and they were trying to sell like penile erection medicine or something to my audience. It pissed me off so bad that
What was the coupon code they were?
who knows? But it was come on, if you're trying to sell sexual arousal product to my audience while I'm doing a tech show, it was kind of the last straw. So that's when I went to Amazon and set up their cloud streaming, and basically I was using Amazon for a while. Now, YouTube up to this point has been fantastic, and they have not been dropping ads during live programming. And as long as you claim that you're doing, an endorsement or a product, basically there is a way to do advertising within these live YouTube videos. They're doing it right now, but they also got big bank, and they don't have to keep their investors happy.
Yeah, so I think we're at this point where these platforms, and I know I mentioned it earlier in the show. There's just no easy way for them to monetize and still keep content on their platform. So I think we're kind of coming into this kind of inflection point where the content providers need to work with the platforms more. But that's a difficult thing. I mean, it's the same thing that that we face at Podcast One too. Working with certain platforms that will take our content and then run pre-rolls against our pre-rolls, and that just doesn't work for our contracts with our advertisers who expect to have, if they contracted for a pre-roll in the program, they're supposed to be the first ad that plays. But if Stitcher or these other platforms are running pre-rolls before our pre-rolls, then that puts us in violation of our agreements, and it's really what needs to happen more is that these content and platforms need to work together more to create advertising experiences and revenue shares, and we're just not there yet. I mean, it's basically an arms race right now between content providers and platforms. Platforms are trying to run ads against programs oftentimes, without permission, and that's a big problem going forward. Is that it creates this environment where each of the content providers have to decide, well, do I want to be on this platform? Because there's a potential that that platform is just going to run ads against our stuff without any agreement or a revenue share, and then we have to pull it off. It creates this adversarial situation with distribution, and it needs to be worked out.
Hey, Rob, there's a solution to the pre-roll thing. Pre-rolls aren't effective. Don't run them.
Well, yeah. No, I don't disagree with you on that point, but nonetheless, that's the reality right now.
It is. And and really, most of us do run a pre-roll, and it's not necessarily right at the beginning as a dedicated ad spot. Many of us announce our sponsor at the beginning of our show. So it is kind of even though that's not the ad spot, that is one of the required drops that. Hey, this show's sponsored in part by blah blah blah.
Yeah, exactly. And if these platforms are running a spot before you get to the content and then your spot, then it creates a different experience and so just somehow this needs to get worked out where platforms and advertisers and content work together to run advertising, and maybe it has to get to a point where it's platform specific, but that's a scale issue too. So at what scale can you justify doing a deal with a platform that you have a cooperative relationship around advertising versus what most people are doing today is where they're selling advertising into one program that gets universally distributed across all these platforms to get the scale that we need to actually monetize.
But I also, and sorry I'm hogging the mic here, but I also look at it now currently at this angle too. Okay, let's say that it's company X is doing that and they have a 2% market share, then okay, it's 2% that I have to deal with. It's not worth the headache.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the problems. You're right. Yeah.
But those 2%ers add up when there's 20 of them,
Well, you're going to as a content provider, you're going to object to anybody doing it for any percentage of your audience. That's the reality of it, and that's probably not necessarily the right way to look at it, but nonetheless, that's what it is.
If I could take it in a little bit different direction, when you use the word content creator in the world of podcast, so much of that is the independent who may just have one podcast, but over time he's gotten a big audience. And so I know, Rob, last week you guys started talking about Patreon. It's an area I've been writing about. And I tend to look more at paid content, and I think that I'm seeing an interesting trend around people trying to convert podcast into a paid content format, and it's not the traditional paywall or pay per use type of thing. It's more of a patron model where I'm seeing interesting movement. And I'm friends with Tom Merritt. You guys know Tom. He left Twit in December, and now he went on over to Patreon, which is a patron platform started by Jack Conte of Pomplamoose fame, and he's getting $10,000 a month from his true fans. And so it's a true fan, obviously a true fan platform. If you have enough true fans, I think it's an interesting conversation for a podcaster. If you have in that 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 subscribers, I think you can think about making some decent money outside of traditional advertising monetization with a podcast.
And Michael, here's the bigger point. I think the smaller shows may actually make more money with that model than they would with advertising. So
absolutely. I mean, I think if they can convert their true fans. The question is, what kind of conversion rate can you get for a couple thousand listeners? If they're hardcore listeners, if you have really dedicated fans in a specific niche, I think you're totally right.
But some of those smaller shows, let's say you're an average podcast with less than 5,000 listeners, and that accounts for about 90% of them. If you have 5,000 listeners and you're doing, let's just break it down by money wise. Let's say you're doing one show a week. That's 20,000 listeners a month that can be billed 20 times a CPM. Let's say that's maybe $20, so that's $400. How many then? Okay, so that's $400 to run a single ad, and that's pure. That's sporadic. You may not have an advertiser all the time. So okay, so let's look at it from the Patreon model. If I can get 100 people or 200 of those under 5,000 to come in at $2, you've replaced your advertiser. And I think 200 is a reasonable number for a small show. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. I'd love to hear
I mean, I
Tom
think
talk about
conversion
his.
rates on historically free medium, it's hard, but 1 to 2% probably is not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, I came from that world where we were trying to get, gig home readers,
Yeah, 1 to
then
2%.
ads to convert to paid. Now it was a little bit higher ticket item, but yeah, I think 1 to 2% maybe is within reach.
That doesn't replace the advertising then. It depends on what level they come in at, I guess, too.
Yeah, because in this model, it's not like it restricts your distribution either, right? So you're basically you're having like a public radio supporters type of model here is what it is. So your content is still free and
Yeah.
freely
And yeah,
available.
you can have your cake and eat it too. You can advertise as well.
Yep. Yep. So it actually is more of a public radio model, and which I think, if you think about it in the bigger picture, the public radio model is really what's ruling a lot of what is kind of cutting edge in the podcasting area. I think that there's this blend that's always been there, and I've thought about this model a lot. I mean, over the years as something, it's like this. Well, there's nothing wrong with getting $2 from 2% of your audience if you have 10,000 listeners. So I've thought about that for a long time, and it's like, but most people when they get into podcasting, they think about well, how many ears can I reach? But it's also, when people think about it, they think about they have a paywall, right? So you're going to take your 10,000, cut them down to 2,000, and that's how big your audience is going to be. And, for a lot of folks, that's not worth it, right?
The guys that have been the king of having fan base support is Curry and Dvorak over at No Agenda. They are the absolute kings on this. They're
they are.
And being able to, and I don't know if they've jumped on this and launched one of these, but I was telling Angelo on the phone the other day, I says, damn, we should have built one of these sites, because really you think about, I don't know what percentage they're taking, Patreon's taking, but talk about almost free money. It's kind of crazy, but
yeah, I mean, I think that Jack came out of the YouTube world where it's even more brutal. It's even more brutal trying to make money off of Google ads, right? Or their ad model.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. But I actually think another interesting trend in podcasting is the level of sophistication I'm seeing in the business podcast genre. These guys are monetizing even better, and what they're doing is using the podcast as a platform, kind of a media hub, and there's a flywheel effect. So you watch obviously guys like Pat Flynn, who I think is kind of one of the big daddies in the business category, and all of these guys that kind of follow on that model. There's a new guy, Brian Clark, who's doing it around New Rainmaker. He's hugely sophisticated because he comes out of that copy blogger site that he's made a great living at. So that's an area to watch, and watch how these guys are monetizing. It's not always an obvious way. It may be like a two-step monetization, but it's not like either advertising or Patreon model. It's building businesses that actually pay better over time.
I have no doubt that Pat Flynn does what he does. He was one of the first, but we got a lot of folks out there that are, in my opinion, are snake oil salesmen that are claiming a certain amount of money, and I want to see a certified copy of their tax return from their account from a CPA, not from something they've Xeroxed.
I think the danger of any online business model is like there's always like, okay, here's the new online business model, and someone's going to basically try to pretend they're Pat Flynn. And
right.
You can't pretend you're Pat Flynn.
Right.
You have to do something, use some of his tenets, and maybe you become like the best content sale. You sell like content libraries around becoming a lawyer or becoming like a transcriptionist or something. But just use some of his ideas. Don't try to pretend you're him.
Right.
That's a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And he does and he's smart in what he's done. Does a great job, Rob.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we just had Cliff Ravenscraft on the show, and we were talking about this a little bit, and there is an opportunity for podcasters or these guys to do shows to support services that they offer, and that's always been the case here. and shows that they do, or like a lot of these guys were down in San Diego, I think, that this past week at the social media marketing conference.
Michael Stelzner's conference. Michael's a good
Yeah,
guy.
exactly. Yeah, and that's been kind of a grassroots thing that's been happening around podcasting too. Is that whole social media space? Those guys have been really evangelizing podcasting as a viable method of building community. And I tend to agree with it. But, I think, Todd's point about some of these guys get a little bit kind of, on the edge of credibility sometimes when they talk about how much money they're making. But I know Cliff is pretty transparent. I mean, he'll actually share a copy of his check or whatever.
Right.
What'll be interesting to watch is there's always a wave of initial excitement around like something new, and then there's the trough of disillusionment.
Right.
And we've already seen podcasting go through the trough of disillusionment, and I think
Couple
that
of times.
you have the potential for trough two, because everyone's evangelizing podcasting again, and there's still we're still here in 2014 talking about monetizing podcasts. So
Right.
That's something to watch for as well.
And
Yeah.
it's funny too, because I'm actually not getting as many emails as before, because maybe people have learned you can't bullshit someone, or at least bullshit me, because I used to get these calls. I mean, literally, 2, 3, 4, 5 a week. Hey, Todd, I'm getting a show, and we're doing 100,000 listeners per episode, and blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. And I'm just on the phone, I'm, the bobblehead thing. Yep, great. Get on the stats. And when you're on the stats, once we've looked at your numbers, we'll talk in a couple of weeks. And then, and hey, I know people are passionate about their content, so so I'm like, and then I look at their stats, and it's like, okay, I know they were being excited, and I don't hold it against them, but it's there's a certain amount of that too, and I think we've got past that. I don't get those calls like I used to, once in a while.
Hey, Todd, I wanted to mention a couple of new companies that maybe you weren't aware of, or kind of the podcaster community is not aware of, that are getting involved in podcasting. There's and supporting business models and ads and things like that. And one is a company called Stream Guys. So a lot of
guys.
many of the kind of streaming radio platforms that have been out there for many years, that support radio stations, are starting to expand into on-demand audio content, which is taking them down this path around supporting and offering services to enable ad insertion and on-demand support of radio stations. But when they go down that path, they get into a situation where they also can offer those same services to pure podcasters too. And one of them is Stream Guys, and another company that's up here in the Seattle area is the Abacast company, which is also has been had a strong history of doing ad insertion into live streams for radio stations, and they're repurposing their technology to do it for podcasting as well. And another company out of out of Denver and it's called AdWiz. So if you're involved in podcasting, and these are kind of new players that are coming into the space to offer their long history of supporting live streaming radio, that a lot of their technology is starting to be morphed into supporting on demand and podcasting. So it might be something for the podcast community to keep an eye on these companies as they develop and make their technologies better to support what's happening in the on-demand radio and podcasting realm here. So I just wanted to mention those companies and kind of get them turned on to the podcast community, because there's people coming into the space as they see success and popularity of content and more of the like the iHeartRadio folks and these platforms that we keep talking about on this show. And the audience, I believe, is growing for all on-demand radio and podcasting, that these companies could become big players in the space.
So they basically provide the technology to do the insertion, right? Is that what these guys do?
Yeah, but they also host and they create feeds. So they're doing, essentially what you're doing with Blueberry or what Libsyn is doing, but yet they have this long-standing technology that they had around doing ad insertions into live streams, and all
Oh,
they're
okay.
doing is kind of repurposing that technology over to dynamically generating downloadable files and kind of Castfire is another player that's been involved in this space since about the same time that Libsyn started, and they have very advanced technology around dynamic ad insertion and being able to create shows on the fly on the server. So you basically have a show template that you upload segments into, and it'll auto assemble an MP3 and geo target and deliver that to a specific market with different ads and different combination of content too. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that there's this whole other side of podcasting that maybe a lot of podcasters don't see that's kind of bubbling up right now.
I wonder if they're helping drive CPM prices down because,
I don't know. It's possible.
because that's the big attack right now. I had a call from a new media buyer last week, and she's claiming she's buying podcast inventory at $3, and I was like, "Not for me, you're not."
Yeah.
$3. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I'm
Well, I mean, I'm sure that that's going on. It may not be best for podcasting, but I think that it's going to happen as people have remnant, inventory, kind of like what's been in the radio space for many, many years. Those are going to go for lower prices. So it's really up to the podcaster and the podcast community to drive more value to get those CPMs up.
She wasn't selling remnant. She was selling a mainstream company, and I just was like,
Really?
I was shocked. I'm like,
The blog world went through this evolution of the drive towards zero in terms of CPNs. That's why Gigome decided to get into paid content in 2009, because they saw the writing on the wall. It's an asymptote. Eventually, if you see the chart, it's the drive towards zero.
Yeah.
And there's obviously going to be huge. There's coming a huge explosion of content in the podcast world. I still think that there's it's an 80-20 rule, even more extreme, in that there's the 20% of the shows are driving 90% of the traffic. So
Right.
I doubt that you're seeing the CPM compression in those shows yet, because it seems a little bit early for the Mark Marons of the world, or the these guys to actually see their CPMs go down. But I definitely think over time it's that middle tier will suffer from CPM pressure.
I think there was about where we saw the first hit was probably 4 years ago, and it was actually driven by one of the major advertisers in the space at the time. And basically, they had changed media companies, and they went from media company 1 to media company 2, and I'm sure they were under considerable pressure to get a lower rate and have a little better, get more money get more inventory for their dollar. And they just came in and said, "This is it. You take it or leave it." And and that's when there's, I guess, for a better word, a lack of advertisers, where you kind of have to just suck it up instead of telling them to go pack sand. As more advertisers move into this space, that'll be the key. That'll be where the delta will happen, and we'll have to wait until as more advertisers move into the space, and we maybe get out of this direct marketing stuff is where we can actually, or response marketing is when we're starting to more aware.
Is it a supply and demand issue though? If you have 10 new shows entering the iTunes Top 100 every week or every month, it seems like there's obviously an explosion, and there's more professional content, and so the advertisers have more shows to choose from.
That's true.
So it's not a fixed amount of shows. So to me, it's that equilibrium of supply and demand.
But there's still a fixed number of advertisers too. There's not. If you look at the space, if there was 50 advertisers right now spending, and I consider a nice spend for a single advertiser to be, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a quarter. That's a decent spend from a single advertiser. And there, I don't think there's 50 that are spending 50 a quarter. There might be 50 spending 10 a quarter, and it all depends. But I just don't see that many coming in. We need more bigger base of advertisers. What we need. And this is digressed again into an advertising show, but
Hey, I try to pull
Well,
it into the patron model conversation.
yeah, but I think the patron model, going back to that, I think it could be good. I really do. But people don't like to, they don't like to pay for content. There's too much free out there.
Well, I think someone needs to be. We've talked about in the past 5 to 10 years, has been talking about micropayments, and I think that needs to be someone. It may have to be Google or someone that creates a nice micropayment wallet, click of a button. So as you surf across the web, as you find new shows, why couldn't you just throw your favorite podcaster $1 for like something? It's like a gratuity model. I think there still is room for innovation in that because, like you said, people hate to pay for content, but I think it's because there's high friction to the experience. I don't mind paying for content if it's small dollar amounts. Like I'll drop $1 in the tin cup as I walk by the guy who's asking for money. I do that online if I could do it easily.
Yeah.
So I think there's some innovation there.
Hey,
that
Rob.
could happen.
Hey, Rob. I know what I need in this room. I need a stripper pole.
Oh, no.
And a stripper, right?
No. Oh, I'm terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. How did we go there? Exactly.
That's a good note to end it on.
So, Rob, do you think then, going back to these other companies, then do you think they're waking up or to the space and
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is that the radio folks are starting to get a little more serious about on-demand radio, and I think these other companies are just responding to that, and I think it's a good sign because it's kind of showing that there really is a podcast industry now. I mean, it's becoming much broader and more wide-reaching than I think many in the podcasting space really realize. There's a lot of stuff going on that everyday podcasters just are not aware of. And these other companies getting involved at different levels and thinking about this stuff in a different way. I mean, a lot of them are kind of, I still hear a lot of pushback on the name podcast, and it's like there's a lot of indifference out there, especially amongst these new companies that are kind of getting involved in the space about the term podcasting, and they tend to, they're originally radio people, so they think of this as just a spin-off of radio, and so it's not. This podcasting thing seems to be kind of a term that they'll use, but it's really on-demand radio is really where I think what this is really all about, and why these companies are seeing an opportunity here.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, they have to support the radio model as long as possible. So of course it's on-demand radio. Because there's a call sign that goes along with the content.
Yeah, and if you think about Pandora and the iHeartRadio folks and how they look at this stuff, that's exactly how they tune in. All these companies, the term podcast doesn't really fit in their world because it's not they're not focused on downloadable content necessarily. They're focused on streaming experiences or playlists and things like that. And that's how they're trying to simulate radio. And I think one of the challenges is that I don't think that a lot of people necessarily want an exact like a genre stream or something like that.
Right.
What they want is personalized. It's what they want to listen to, and to make it as simple as possible. And to a lot of these companies, that's on-demand radio, right? It's a personal playlist or whatever it is. That's the direction, and they're applying a lot of the same monetization strategies that were in existence for radio, and so these worlds are clearly coming together. It's just I'm not sure if it's going to be something tremendously new or just a variant on what's been successful and has been a multi-billion-dollar industry up until now.
What we see for trends on our apps and on our set-top box apps and so forth is that they're the ones that use our MyCast feature, where they actually go in and pick the shows that are going. And basically, they're building a playlist. Is what all it really is. That's all MyCast is you know, a ongoing updating playlist of new content that, and they use that, man, heavily. That's probably the number one thing they use in those systems. They don't do a lot of, they find shows and then they just, you know, they add them to their MyCast list or their playlist. And so I think from a Pandora standpoint, you know, if I was going to go and have a Pandora app, I would just want to, you know, again, click the shows that I want to subscribe to or listen to, and have those available in a functional playlist. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people do and talk to discovery, and I just don't see that being a big part of it, because you don't have the time. It's not like you're listening to a 3-minute song and then you got the next song. You're listening to 20, 30, 45-minute, 1-hour program, and usually by then you're done. You're ready to do something else. But
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people find out about podcasts or a particular show based on a friend sharing it, or if there was a conversation. It was, you know, like me mentioning on the show today about that radio stuff podcast, talking to the guy from Pandora. I think that a lot of shows are discovered through word of mouth, and people just don't do a lot of kind of just exploring. And I think, you know, if you think back to the early days of the web and the internet, I know I spent a lot of time just kind of like, you know, it was almost like going on a hike or something like that up in the mountains. You're just exploring, and that's what I was doing in my browser. I just don't know that people spend that time to just browse through and try and find random podcasts. I think it's they hear about it from a friend or in their industry, or if they, you know, see it in a social post or something like that on Facebook or Twitter, and that's how they discover shows.
yeah, I heard on saw something on Facebook. There was the Twit folks were talking about complete redesign of their website. You guys hear anything about what they're doing?
No,
No, I
well,
think it's probably
no,
about time. That site looks like it's from like 5 years ago, basically.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't mean to be mean, but it does look a little antiquated.
Well, and I think that Tom Merritt leaving was kind of, I think, was a little damaging to Twit. I think is just my own opinion. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think. I know. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
Tom's a guy who could go straight to any broadcast radio, or like he could go to like a tier one TV station and be like a personality. I mean, the guy's such a pro. They
Yeah.
lost a real talent there, and I think it was mainly because Tom was in LA and
Yeah.
Leo was in San Francisco.
Yep.
Leo wanted someone in there, but I mean, losing Tom, I think, was a big deal.
I think it's hard
Yeah.
for, you know, can't blame Tom. Was away from his wife. You know, it's that takes a toll on you over time.
Yeah. I mean, he did what he needed to do, and I don't think it was as big of an issue as I think Leo thought it was to have him in LA. I mean, his show was still really good, and it was driving a good audience from what I could tell. I just don't think that what's been replaced in his place is probably driving the audience that Tom used to drive. That's for sure.
Yeah, Tom took some people with him, I think.
Yeah. Well, now he's got like three shows, and you know he's doing a lot of stuff, building his own and competing against Leo now. So
You know, and it's kind of interesting too. I haven't watched any Twit stuff in a while, but you know, for a while we were losing shows over at Tech Podcast for. We lost a couple of shows that went to Twit, and of course it's kind of funny because I think Leo's model over there is you perform where you get spit out, and a couple of those guys, or at least one of them, got spit out pretty quick. I think he lasted 90 days or something. So I don't know how much recruiting Leo's doing. At least I'm not hearing of it. I'm not having people come to me and say, "Hey, I need to, you know, get out of our and drop the, you know, basically drop from being on the network or being, you know, can I get a waiver for not having a, you know, an advertiser?" Because basically we make the folks that we work with, if they take an advertiser with us, to not compete against us for that same advertiser for a year once they leave, just as a way to keep people from doing one deal and then going on their own. But haven't seen any of that come in recently. So at least on my side, I'm not seeing a. I don't know. I don't know who's Leo's recruiting or if he is.
yeah, I know that they just launched a new show called Marketing Mavericks. I just showed up in iTunes, so it looks like he's launched a show that is a little bit away from his core, and maybe he's trying to branch out a little bit, around social media and trends and communication strategy. I'm reading from it's hosted by Tanya Hall. So it's a little bit of a departure from what he's typically done around gadgets and tech platforms and things like that. So it's interesting how he's maybe going to evolve that platform. But I think losing Tom was a big loss for them.
So who went with Tom? Can you say?
Well, Mike.
Tom went by himself. I mean, he basically isn't a fully independent guy. I mean, I know that he did a show on cord cutting with Brian, a guy named Brian, whose last name is eluding me. I think Brian, in allegiance to Tom, also left Twit, I believe. So, I don't think it was a matter of I'm marching with my people out the door. I think it's just they couldn't reach agreement. Tom wanted to be in LA with his wife, and Tom has a big enough audience. Remember, he was tied to I think the Revision 3 podcast side for a while. I mean, he's been podcasting for 10 years. He's built an audience before even Leo. Yeah. He was with Leo.
He did a show for a while, even with the Revision 3 while he was working at Twit too. So he's been really kind of all over the map, working with a lot of different podcast networks. I mean, he's probably one of the most prolific podcasters.
He's been doing a daily tech show for like a decade, and that built an audience. And he was early. So
daily is brutal.
Well, on CNET, and I mean, he was on broadcast radio for a while. I mean, he's a professional talent, and he's had a steady flow of like probably 3 or 4 podcasts or more, or 5 podcasts that he does every week. So he's a full timer at this.
I don't know if you guys have been over to the Revision 3 website lately, but they went through a revision. They completely redone their website too. So they went.
I haven't been over there.
And I think they actually did responsive design. Let me look and see if they did. Yeah, this is basically some of the same. Yeah, it's smart. Yeah, it is. It's a responsive design site. And I think probably that's what Leo's trying to get to too. I know that's one thing we're working on my site, because my site's long in the tooth too.
So what's the timing on all that, Todd?
I'm waiting on the template now. Really, that's what I'm waiting on, Rob, is the template to be done. And we've had just 2 major projects we've been trying to kick out, and before he can actually work on it. So it's just design. I just need him to cut the damn thing up and give it to me so I can put it on. I told him, I said, you got a couple weeks. If you can't, I'm going to turn it over to someone else, a web designer, have them cut it for me. It's because, that's the hardest part, is getting the design down, and we're done. The design's ready. It's just got to be cut and put in the site.
Yeah, what's really interesting about this new Revision 3 site is that the Revision 3 branding isn't even on the site.
Well, it's at the very top.
I don't see it.
Oh.
Right here.
Oh, yeah, for some reason it's not loading for me in Chrome.
Really?
No. I know what it was. Yeah, I was in a smaller responsive design.
Oh, and it drove it up.
And it disappeared.
Oh, that's
in Chrome.
Well,
anyway.
let's because I'm in Chrome now, so let's scrunch it here and see what happens.
It disappears.
Yeah, at a certain point it does. Well, it's the logo. Let me go back up the top. The logo changes. Yeah. Crap.
Yeah.
It's all the way down on mine. You can kind of see it, but
yeah, it's like a little bug at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's anyway, when you're trying to have a site that's mobile ready, you kind of got to do that. So. Actually, I kind of like how they did that. I might actually tell my guys to do that with my site, too, just to go to the bug when it's on mobile. That's smart.
So, Jim Louderback, the guy who's the CEO of Revision 3, he calls himself the president of Discovery Digital, right. I think, now. So I think over time you'll see Revision 3 branding start to fade away anyway, because all that Revision 3 acquisition that's basically they're now doing all the digital online stuff that's new and different from anything you see in the traditional broadcast channel on Discovery.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, Rob, we're close to the bottom of the hour here, so we're going to have to think about wrapping up here shortly. Just from a programming note, I'm actually headed your way tonight. I'm actually flying I'm not going into SeaTac. I'm going into is it Burlington, whatever the airport is north of you.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's actually saved me
Flying over my house.
saved me $1,000 to go in there versus going to SeaTac. So
Bellingham.
Really?
You flying
Wow.
to Bellingham?
yeah, Bellingham. That's where I'm going.
Bellingham. Well,
Yeah.
that's way up north. I mean, that's up
I-
by the Canadian border.
I'm going on Alaska Airlines. That's who I'm flying.
Ah, okay.
And yeah, it was like United was like $1,600 from Hawaii to SeaTac, and Alaskan was like $500 round trip. So and my meeting place is up there
Wow.
anyway. So I don't think we're gonna. How's your weather? What are you guys wearing these days? Is it light jacket wear or what do I need? to
Yeah,
wear?
it's mostly always light jacket wear here, except for like in July and August when you can get away with t-shirts.
So next.
It was 60 degrees yesterday and
Oh,
sunny, but now
I
it's
know.
overcast. So
Yeah, 60 isn't what Todd's used to.
Well, 60's fine. Yeah, I like
it's for
60.
us. It's like shorts weather. I put shorts
Yeah,
on.
exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
for me too. I'm a fat guy, so I have plenty of insulation already. So 60 degrees is perfect.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I'll be flying back to Honolulu on Saturday. So no show next Saturday for sure. So
Okay.
you get a break.
But our audience just craves our content. We have to
Yeah.
be there for them.
Yeah. Well, it's business calls. I'm actually I'm I took this the company that I'm going to go see. I'm doing a consulting deal all week, and I begged them to move it to another week because NAB's next week. And I was like, man, you're killing me because I want to be at NAB. And the guy says, well, if you want to make the money, this is a week we have. And I'm like, "Rrr." So yeah, it really blows. I'm not going to be at NAB because
Didn't you used to do? I know at CS you do like kind of like your live show from
Yeah.
there. Do you not do a live show from NAB, or have you?
we
done a launch?
have, and usually we do it through like 2 years ago we did no, last year we did 3 hours a day in the live stream booth. Basically they provided all the gear. We just walked in as talent and had our people there for it. We did that 2 years in a row with live stream. And then Don is still going to be there. Don Bain is. We have he's going to be streaming live out of the blog, basically the new Media Expo Pavilion that they're going to have there at NAB out of North Hall. So Don's going to be live a couple hours a day doing the Gadget Professor show there. But this consulting thing came up long before Rick had called me and said, hey, can you come to Vegas and do something for us with that? So I was already committed to go to this thing up in Washington State. So, but I'll be up in your neck of the woods and checking things out. Haven't been up in Washington State in a long time.
Well, and it's looking more and more like the full New Media Expo is going to be at NAB next year,
Yeah,
right?
potentially, yeah.
Potentially, that's right.
Butt up against it or intermixed with it or something to that effect. But
Yep.
it's bad too because it's like I'm getting all these calls from people wanting to do meetings, and I'm like, for the first time in like 5 years, I'm not going to be there, and so that kind of it's good just to get face to face with these folks from time to time too, and you find all this discovery of new gear and new services and some stuff that you usually can't afford because they want $100,000 for the product. But time will tell.
Hey, well, Todd, it's different now in Washington. We're world champions, home of the world champion Seahawks. So it'll
That's
feel
right.
different for you.
Okay,
He's waiting.
That's right.
whatever. The team that
We're still milking that. I'm still milking that.
That's right. Exactly. We're still partying on
We
that
were
one.
starved for a long
Yes.
time.
Oh, okay, so you guys don't know Starved. Okay, I grew up in Michigan, and the Lions has been my team since God was a child. So you can tell how starved I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you had an NBA championship in there too.
Yeah, I don't care about NBA. I watch football. That's about it. Maybe a little baseball. Tigers do okay. I'm close enough. I've been over in the West Coast, for the last 20 years, so I should really pick a new team. So maybe, I can be one of these wannabe fans of the Seahawks or something. Maybe I can do that.
There you go. There you go.
Jump on board.
That's right.
Jump
So-
on the train.
So We'll welcome you.
Yeah.
We'll welcome you, Todd.
So anyway, hey, everyone, make sure you check out Michael's site at two sites, nextmarket.co.co. Picked up one of those great .cos, and of course at technology.fm.
Yeah, if you like
And
tech podcasts, it's
yeah.
another just my little curated site. So check that out.
I like your album art. You guys got someone nice doing that. That's good. Good job on the album art there. So that's
Bold and bright.
yeah,
That's right.
50% of the
Yeah,
battle.
I don't
there.
know who had the tip, but like someone said you got to have an icon you can just see really well in iTunes, and so like dark with light text for just seeing in iTunes is huge to me
Yeah,
because I see so many icons that you can't even read it.
yeah,
Yeah,
People
I mean,
want to put
'cause
their
it's-
faces on there.
they're all displayed at all these different sizes, and oftentimes they're really small, and they have to be readable. Yeah, that's smart.
Also, want to remind folks we've kicked off podcasternews.com. That site's been rebranded and relaunched, and we've got a number of writers over there. So we're putting content up on the site almost on a daily basis at this point, maybe every other day. I've set the guys. I set a budget for the site, and they're going to fast approach their monthly quota here pretty quickly. So we are taking guest posts as well, and there's a submission basically. A policy on the website. We don't do this is not the place where you're going to promote your podcast, but the site's now up and running. And Rob, does this look like a familiar design?
Yes, it does.
So I was lazy and just copied one of the templates we had, one of our stock templates. But the iTunes feed has been approved, so that's up and available as well. But soon we're going to have New Media Show on its own independent site. I keep saying that, but like I told you, Rob, it might be June before it happens. But
Okay.
But-
well, we'll keep plugging away, and then let's make a big splash of it at that time.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
absolutely, Michael, where can they reach you as on basically Twitter and all that stuff?
I was early enough on Twitter to get my name. So Michael Wolf. Wolf is without an E, just like the animal. So Michael Wolf on Twitter, and email me. The podcast people I like to email me just podcast@nextmarket.co.
Well, that's perfect, easy enough. And of course, you can email Rob and I here at Todd or Rob at newmediashow.com. That'll get through to us. So we appreciate your feedback.
Or Twitter.
Yeah,
Feel free to ping us on Twitter, and it's just at Rob Greenlee. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm at Geek News. So unlike you guys, I didn't claim my own name. I figured that was taking up too many characters to begin with.
Do you guys use About Me? I was there early enough to get literally a word. I got Wolf. So about.me/Wolf. It seems like a lot of people use that on their Twitter as kind of their personal identity page.
I think I claimed mine, but I don't think I ever put anything on it. I had to go over there and look.
Yeah, I never claim. I use my own name as domain. So
Yep.
Smart.
But Michael, thanks for taking time out of your schedule.
This has been fun. Thanks, guys. And we'll see. I'll wave at you as you fly over, Todd.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to bring some pineapple weather with me, and if it works out, you guys will have 70 degrees and trade winds, no rain, and maybe just an afternoon shower.
we'll definitely get the afternoon shower part. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know about the trade winds, though.
Yes.
All right, guys, and the audience,
guys.
Thanks for being here. Everyone,
Safe
take
travels.
care.
Bye.
Next time.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Aloha. All right, let me shut off YouTube. Those of you on YouTube, we'll see you later. Okay. Yes, I've been logged out. Why you log me out, YouTube? Yes, I want to use this account. Okay.